Let me say something that might sound a bit uncomfortable. We've solved the wrong AI problem. For the last 2 years, we've been optimizing for building better prompts, better tools, better systems, better workflows, better visualizations, UI, dashboards, as well as learning how to talk to our AI models and to code faster, build better workflows than before, and how to just get more output from the work that we're now doing leveraging AI. Now, to be clear, yes, it has worked, and it's made us actually have tremendous amounts of success and unprecedented levels of growth. But there's a change that's happening, and it's important for us to understand where we're at today and where we have to go to continue progressing. The average person can do substantially more work than they ever could have before. And yet, people still feel left behind. In our conversations, everyone feels as the person right next to them has this new magical window into the world of AI, and they're keeping ahead of them in some way, shape, or form. Essentially, they feel like everyone else is moving faster than them, or everyone else has this missing little seeks that's allowing them to do substantially better than what they're doing. After talking to different operators and engineers and teams and marketers and founders, let me tell you the truth. There is no secret prompt that you're missing that someone else has that's making them do this 100x leverage that you're missing out on. The bottleneck moved from prompting to something else. And we're still approaching this as if it's an AI problem. Like we're trying to understand how to, better learn this tool or do better prompting or having the right framework for approaching it. And while all of those things are true, you should have a solid understanding of all of these pieces and how they apply. You see, the bottleneck has moved from one's capacity to one's ability to think. More importantly, understanding the systems thinking, systems design, having a clear process and framework to implement and move forward. Maybe a better way to say this is that we've moved from the tools themselves to having better, or the need for better, cognitive architecture, the way we structurally put things in our mind. Think of it as moving from what can this model do to how do I help to guide its intent and direction and its judgment around this task, this process, this procedure, this thing that we're doing. I would argue this is probably why people tend to feel a little frustrated trying to leverage these current models, because of the difference in how they were versus how they are today. And for better or worse, there's really no band-aid to really help fix this one. It's inherently requiring a different way of thinking and doing everything that we do when it comes to leveraging AI and our work. Now, before you just try to tune this out, if you're using AI in any way, shape, or form, whether you're writing code, you're building products, or, creating proposals, or trying to improve operations, or having a conversation in general with AI to get alternative thinking or a different perspective or idea towards something, or building spreadsheets, or managing your teams, and so on. If you're using AI in some way, shape, or form, this way of thinking is going to be for you, because it should help you to, or at least having this conversation, it should hopefully help you to think about using AI in a more structured, more efficient way. The first thing that we're seeing builders who are in the top 1% do differently than everyone else is that they're no longer thinking about how they individually go and build and maintain and control everything, but they then instead adopt sort of the mindset of an engineering manager or a PM in terms of controlling the overall process, and doing so not metaphorically, but operationally. See, an engineering manager isn't someone who's managed by how much they write, or, how clever they are, or how structured it is whenever it comes to them doing everything themselves. They're responsible for, say, the output quality, the throughput, the coordination, the direction, and the success of the system as a whole, rather than one individual part. Previously, this person would have to be managing a whole team of people, and those people would then have their own guidance, their own direction, their own ideation, their own way in which they think and act and behave and execute and follow through. But instead of managing humans, they're now managing agents. Essentially, you're no longer the individual contributor. You're the manager of the execution of the entire ecosystem as a whole. That typically means you're going to have clear missions, clear guardrails, clear endpoints, clear definitions of what is done, or at least as closest to what you can perceive or understand. Now, instead of using humans, you're leveraging agents, which are tireless. They are really fast. They're very often confidently wrong in the work that they actually do. And so you have to understand when that occurs and being able to move up and down within the system that you're designing or building with AI to be able to diagnose and iterate and help work it through its own problems that it creates inevitably. So the premise I'm getting at is that you are having to shift your thinking from doing the actual work, feeling as if you need to do all of the build out before you get to AI, or having a super long conversation to get to that end solution. Instead, you are helping to design the environment where your work is able to be completed successfully from these agents at scale. Right? So you're essentially outsourcing the deliverability and you're retaining the structured way of thinking and forward progression. Now, for many who have been in that role of heavy execution, and it's essentially been their career path, regardless of the role that you're in, whether you're a developer, whether you're, I don't know, an accountant, or you're doing different pieces, it's weird. It's a weird direction to be in. However, you're able to be officially in a place of higher levels of thinking, but you have your foundational experience allowing you to ladder down and be deep into the actual process and how in which it's done. What's great about this is it allows you and others to have immense amounts of leverage, where before you're only able to maybe do a few outputs, you're now able to do 10x, 50x, 100x the outputs as before by leveraging these agents more effectively in the areas that deem their attention. I want to go down a rabbit hole for a sec. There's a bit of a legacy mentality around some key aspects of AI and leveraging AI. And it is about the amount of pre-work one has to do in order to feel as if they're the one actually being the guiding light. They've lit the torch to direct and handhold AI forward, right? Where you feel that I need to go through and do all the thinking first, or I need to organize everything more efficiently for AI, or I need to bring whatever it is into AI for it to then take all this beefy documentation that you put together. However, especially if you're using something like Claude, its ability to start with an idea and do iterative thinking, forward progressive thinking, is much more effective than you would actually think. The previous notion at which you need to spend an hour or two or multiple to just put together a highly efficient or beautiful PRD, not necessarily needed in the current environment. It can help, and there's a time and place for that. However, understanding that you're able to get to an end result faster now, often by doing your iterative progression with the AI instead of 100% on your own, is a version of thinking that I've noticed that still a lot of people are in, where they do so much of the pre-work to feel like they've actually gotten something done themselves, so they can have a portion of the work sitting on their shoulder, like, oh, I did this. Whereas the people who aren't doing that, the people who are just iterating with AI, progressing forward, and are seeing tremendous results, or are progressing much more efficiently and faster because of AI's ability to handle not completely digested thoughts and helping to progress things forward, and you being able to give it a role and a series of responsibilities in it helping to stay in those lanes and help you progress things where it's been identified as its key objectives or its key deliverables. In 2026, if you learn how to change the altitude in which you are doing your work with AI, I think you're going to start seeing much better results. And let me dive into what I mean by that is most builders, most people who using AI are staying at the same plane the entire time during their conversation. As in, they're either very high up and not understanding in detail what is actually going on in the background, right? You tell it to, I don't know, build you a automated proposal platform for yourself. That's great. But if you don't understand what it's actually building and the reasonings why it's putting those pieces together, you're going to deal with sort of, I'll call it archaic tech debt in a sense, where you're building a feature set that an actual developer is going to have to work through and iterate and fix down the line. And if you are clearly not understanding that that's actually what you're doing in that stage, that's an issue, because it means you're incorrectly building without having taken the time to dive deeper. Alternatively, you have the people who are inherently engineers, and so they are used and expect to understand every line of code, every process, every iteration, every feature set, literally anything and everything that they add to the project itself. And the downside of being on either end of that is you obliterate the amount of tokens that you use in the platforms, because you are over relying on AI in one category being super high level, and the other one is you spending a ton of human time, right, and iteration with AI to understand every single little layer that's been added and built on. And there's a time and place for both of these, but more often than not, the ones who want to succeed and not cap themselves in terms of growth are playing in between these two. They are understanding when they need to be high level when it comes to the build and wanting to understand the broad concepts of what they're putting together, how they're doing it, why. Is it moving? Is it moving in the right trajectory, right? Is it staying on path? And other times, understanding when it starts to fall off the rail and it needs to be reshifted or redirected or altered in order to continue progressing forward in the main directive, the main objective. Now, understanding when you need to shift in altitude, going up and down between those tools and systems and your processes is a really important piece, because it means that you are able to feel comfortable and confident being fluid in your systems. And what I mean by that is if you've got a platform that you've built and you've added in a feature set and it's moving in the wrong direction, it's not showing itself in the correct way, it's not interacting with your backend in the way that you need to be able to understand how to dive into that documentation or that code to work out actually what that problem is and be able to diagnose and iterate and communicate with your AI to solve that problem, whether it is a prompting structure resolution where you need to readjust how it's been prompted. You need to maybe understand how to adjust that code and guide it, or to get its input on specific categories or areas. But if you only sit at the high level, you're just going to miss that. You're just going to sit here and talk in circles, never getting to the actual result. Or it will provide a result, but a real developer will know that it is trash. Alternatively, you being the one that only does the narrowness in that process, you're doing all of the work yourself at that point. So understanding that balancing act is a really important factor and piece that's a must as you move forward. A key factor top builders have when it comes to leveraging AI and agents as a whole is understanding how to and when to separate build mode from reflection mode, where you need to be in those two different levels. And that's, when you work with agents, as you understand, they move absurdly fast. They're tireless. They can work at all times. And as long as the internet's up and running and you've got the ability for them to continue progressing forward, they're going to do so. And so iteration and progression move so much faster than the way that we think, right? And so you've got tabs updating everywhere. You've got tasks getting finished. Features are being shipped and up to date. But while that flow state is going to be very powerful and exciting, honestly, can be dangerous if you don't take the time to understand and reflect upon what is actually being created. That way, you're not just being overwhelmed by the progression, but you are confident in the direction it's actually moving. That way, you don't come towards the end of something that you think is complete just to find out that you have to revert back multiple iterations because it's been building in the wrong direction, because it misunderstood your intent and your objective because of the way that you communicated or you followed up or drove it down the wrong path. To help with this, I want to give you a few questions that you can use to get yourself started as you're working through this. And that's things such as what prompts actually have worked and getting the outcome that I've wanted, right? What agents were getting stuck? Was it specific roles or responsibilities that I've given them? Is there different areas that they keep breaking in, right? Maybe that validates a structure that I've given them that's just incorrect for what it is we're trying to do. What failure patterns keep repeating themselves regardless of the project that I'm putting together? And what would I want to never happen again? Understanding the bads before you just focus on the goods are really important to help mitigate these problems as best as possible before they ever happen. Now, if you don't ever articulate what this is and you just always go into a new build or continue your build without breaking these things down and having clear understanding of what they are, you're likely going to hit those same walls over and over again, regardless of the build at some point in the process. I know I've rambled for a bit, but essentially let's look at 2026 in terms of the potential progression that we want to follow for having the best success with leveraging AI. Now, most people are going to do their best to just try to speed run everything via brute execution on every task it is that they do, where others are just going to go in blind and not take the moment to have any understanding of stuff, right? And the goal here really is to have a hybrid of being able to execute as fast as humanly possible or agentically possible, but also have enough time and giving yourself the time to articulate and understand the improvements and iterations that are being done at a good enough level. You can define what good enough is on your terms, but a good enough level so that way as things do progress forward, you're actually knowingly making progress rather than having the false presumption that progress has occurred because something has changed in front of you. Just because new code is written, just because a new feature was shipped, just because a new use is there or you've got a new proposal, doesn't mean that it actually was doing what you wanted. If it's slop at the end, it's slop from the beginning. So we want to prevent slop from occurring before we ever start building. And the easiest way is to start by understanding the end goal, understanding how we want to try to get there, understanding when and where AI should be embedded, and understanding that we might want to leverage iterative processing with AI to try to get to our end goals. In short, we've moved away from this one-way relationship with AI where I speak to it and then it does a thing, and it's now a cohesive partnership more and more. And I think that progression is going to continue as we move through 2026 and beyond, where we are truly interacting with AI in conjunction, functioning as a team member, not as just an executor. Your job now isn't just to prompt and to give it everything it needs to do. It's to understand what matters. It's to protect your intent, hold on to the central vision that you're building towards or creating with, and insist on understanding the meaning in the direction that you're actually trying to go in. If you can move through 2026 understanding what you're building, how you're building it, why you're building, and the prime directive that you're trying to get out of it, you're going to be doing substantially better than the average person that you're talking to day to day who says they leverage AI. So if you haven't done so already, take some time to understand systems thinking and work towards growing and iterating by thinking first and acting second. I wish you the best. See you in another video.